been doing marketing, I've been doing product, I've been doing content, bunch of other things, right? Every marketeer today is expected to be a T-shaped marketeer, right? So there's five or six things that they have to do. They have to learn a little bit of channels, they have to learn a little bit of operations, they have to learn a little bit of creative. All of this is necessary. Once I realized that at Uber that product has a lot of power, I thought, okay, let me just switch and move to product. And then for the last couple of years, before the term was made, was coined and was popular, I became an AI generalist. Today I call myself that. Back then I just called myself a consultant, but I'm starting to realize that this is becoming a real thing. I've been privileged to work at some great places with some great people. So I was at Uber, I was at Nas Daily, I was at Red Health, I was at Ofo. But whenever you see a slide like that, right, it looks fancy. Our CVs are the best version of ourselves. But when you look at the path there, right, it's often quite messy. So I also want to be real about that. When I started out, I wanted to be a creative guy. So I started as a photographer. Then I thought, who gives photographers work? And it was the agencies or the studios. So I said, okay, let me move on and try and become the agency guy. Then I said, oh, the clients are the ones, the businesses are the ones that are giving business to the agency. So let me move on to the client side because that place seems to have a lot of power and they're able to execute a lot of things because a lot of my ideas were getting rejected as an agency guy, right? So then I realized, okay, managing large teams must be the real secret behind all of this. Then I said, okay, maybe starting my own thing will be giving me that, final full freedom of executing everything that I want. And today I'm back to not leading teams, but being a solo company guy as an AI generalist. So it's like a full circle from being solo, starting solo to, coming back and becoming a one person team again. But the truth is, at large, I was just a frustrated guy at work, right? And to be real, my days, my weeks, or my years, depending on what timeline you pick, they kind of felt like this, right? Morning, I was excited. Afternoon, my boss would come and reject my idea, so I got frustrated. Morning, I was excited. Afternoon, my developers would come and say, hey, the sprint is full. I cannot take your feature in. And I'd get frustrated. So there was a constant frustration, about hey, I want to do this, but something or the other gets in my way. It could be people, it could be processes, it could be things, right? And I'm sure all of you have felt this way. And I used to feel this way a lot because I like ideas, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who want to do some great things. Whenever you get blocked, you get frustrated, right? So that is one of the core reasons why I have managed to become an AI generalist. You need that frustration, right? You need to channelize that frustration because AI now really enables you to be beyond what your core skill set is or what your core area of expertise is, right? Let me show you how it looks. Back in the day when I was a generalist, I would do a little bit of research. I would learn a little bit of analytics and data. I was always good at content. I learned growth. I learned CRM. I learned writing. I even had to learn user experience because all of these are essential for marketing and product. But then once the AI tools and models came into the fore, right, it started feeling like everything is in 80% instead of a 20%. So that same T-shaped structure now looks like a big block, right? And I said, let's flip the bird to the corporate system and let's try and do all of it and let's see where we end up, right? And I can say that so far in the last 3 years now of running this practice, it's been going well. It's been turning out that, this is the best way to stay on top of what is happening in the AI world because every single day there's a new update. All right. On that note, we'll keep doing these, fun little color polls every once in a while. I'd want to know what the room is at. What color is the room? Is it a yellow? Is it an orange? Pick green if you're a generalist, and pick maroon or red if you're a specialist. And I just want to understand this because some of the demos that we'll take, we can kind of switch real time depending on how the room is feeling. Lots of greens. I noticed this as a trend. There are more generalists than specialists in the world. But all those specialists, can I have you represent in the chat? How many of you have spent 5 years or more in that same field and really deeply know about that particular field. There you go. I can see the reds coming in the chat. Amazing. 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 Right? The good news is that irrespective of which side of the spectrum you are in, you will end up having the ability to move towards the other, which means if you're a specialist, there's no better time in the world than today to become a generalist. And if you're a generalist, you can pick one vertical that you like or that you need, and then you can go really deep and become a specialist in that. Right. And I've experienced both sides of the coin, and that's why I can say it with confidence. Now, if you come out to practically what has been happening, in the last 6 months of being an AI generalist, I've been able to build a few very important things for me. The first one is a 2% startup called as Regality AI. And this is built on top of AI, built with the help of AI, but it helps solve a complex problem of anyone that is moving money from outside the country into India. Right. So it plays in the space of foreign exchange, and it is a very complex space. A lot of people get a lot of penalties, and Regality tries to protect them from that. The second one, Funny already mentioned this, is called buildwithrv.com. And this is my consultancy business. And I'm able to scale this up purely and purely as a one-person team because I have AI helping me. The third one is a space of passion for me, a space of community for me. I got diagnosed with ADHD 3 years ago. And I realized that I'm one of those people who has a system to figure out certain things. So I thought I need to share this with the community. I ended up building an iOS app which gives you shortcuts, Apple shortcuts that help you manage that condition better. And it's been a fantastic experience because across these three, I've been able to connect with so many builders. And at the end of the day, I feel like AI gives you all this opportunity because you end up working and meeting more people. So it actually makes you more human, as ironic as that sounds. Now, in short, I've been cooking, and I hope that you could borrow a thing or two from that journey. But today, I'm here to share these recipes with you. All right, let's get started. All of you who've been nervous or almost fidgety about when does this session actually start, this is that moment. Let's jump right in. Now, what is Gen AI? Or what is generative AI as we know it, right? All kinds of AI that you're using, whenever you're using ChatGPT or Claude, these are all called forms of generative AI. And that is because they're able to create original content such as text, images, and videos. And they're doing it by learning from very large data sets that we humans have created on computers, right? And if you want to look at the overall environment, kind of looks like this. Now, the first outermost circle is artificial intelligence or AI, and it's everywhere, right? Everything today, you go out there, even a banana is AI native if you want to buy it, right? That's just how marketeers have made it. But artificial intelligence is a very broad term. Anything that can match human intelligence is supposed to be termed as artificial intelligence, and there are very vague definitions of that. For the past 50 odd years, this term has been playing here and there. It's been, in the sci-fi movies, it's been, in our lives around us, but we've just not, acknowledged it for its existence. The next layer is machine learning, right? This is where things get interesting. So this is how systems are learning from data. Now, a best example that I like to give here is, imagine you're looking at your webcam and you're holding pictures of cats, right? And you tell the computer, hey, recognize these as cats. And you keep showing them hundreds of pictures of cats. After a point in time, when you show it a picture of dog and then ask it to recognize, it'll say this is not a cat because it has learnt what it is to understand and identify a cat. But where things get interesting is when you go one level deeper in deep learning. Deep learning is us trying to kind of replicate what our brains do, right? From when we were a kid to now, we've been able to learn some really complex things, make friendships with a lot of people and things like that, right? So all of that is possible because our brains work in a very interesting network manner, and that is what we call as neural networks. Now, if I end up showing this same webcam after showing it thousands of images of a cat without even telling it it is a cat, and then I go ahead and show it an image of a tiger, it'll say 60% cat. And that is when you know that the system is really learning. You've not even told it as a cat, but it's able to figure out something from the cat family, right? I like to give this example because we know that tigers are like cats, but they're big cats, right? So the computer is able to identify this basis the training data that we are giving it. And the more and more we give it, the better it gets. And that's what we are seeing with all the learning models out there. The last or the deepest layer and the layer that matters the most to us is called as large language models. In fact, these form the core of generative AI that we see and use today. Large language models have the ability to work on language related tasks, but now have started to become what we call as multimodal as well, because you can generate images, you can generate music, you can generate videos, you can generate all kinds of stuff today with the help of LLMs. Now let's go and see this practically. We've all done this, right? You put in an input in ChatGPT and you magically get an output, right? You feel like I've just entered and the word starts streaming on your screen. But have you ever wondered what's actually happening here? What's happening behind the scenes? Let's try and get into that. And let's get into that with a meta example, right? Let's try and understand large language models with the help of large language models. That'll be fun. If I were to ask any AI today, explain large language models to me like I'm 5 years old, what will it do? The moment you press enter, what's happening in the mind of this large language model? Let's go inside, right? The first thing it does is a step called tokenization. Tokenize is nothing but breaking the text into smaller tokens. So you can see our statement in the middle and you can see the colors at the bottom on your screen. Each color is one token. Once you've broken these into tokens, you can then go ahead and embed them. Now, embeddings are nothing but converting the text into numbers. If you go back to your class 4 or class 5, wherever you've studied, you will remember that teachers told you that computers are binary, right? They only understand ones and zeros. This is kind of us getting back to that because the computer doesn't understand English, but it understands each English word as a set of numbers, right? And the special thing about embeddings and why they are important is it puts similar words close by to each other in that neural network that we just spoke about, right? So imagine you have a close friend, right? They'll be somewhere closer, but imagine someone you met in your school, way back 20 years ago. They'll be somewhere far away, right? So you know that there is distance between these two, at least even just imaginary distance. So that's a good way for you to understand that similar words are nearby each other, like a king and queen will be next to each other, but a king and a barber will be slightly away from each other. But a king and a dog will be even more away because they're a different species, right? So that way, similar words are grouped together and different words are put away. And this is one of the most important things that embeddings do for us. Once they are embedded, the model then focuses on what are the most important parts of this text. Now, large language models and like I'm 5 years are important. Why? Because if it misses large, it'll just tell us about language models and maybe it'll explain about English and Chinese and other things. If it misses 5 years, it will end up giving you a PhD level explanation and none of us, not even me, will understand, what AI is saying. Right? So it needs to really get the query right. Now let's do this with a fun exercise, right? I want all of you to focus on your chat because we will do the next step thinking that we are AI. Now, if I were to ask you to predict the next word of this particular statement, what would your answer be? Imagine you have a super smart robot friend who has read every dash. And you can see it in the chat. Something interesting happens each time we do this. A lot of you have said the word book. Now let's pause and let's do this exercise again. A lot of you chose the word book because you saw on your screen the word book exists, and in your context, you want to be right. And you wanted to say, okay, I think I just have two options. One of them is called book, The other one is called bank. So I'm going to choose one of them. But bank didn't make sense. So let me go with book. Now assume that I delete that sentence from the screen. Let's do this exercise again where you can fill the blank with any word that you think is right, that you think is most right. Let's try and do this exercise again where all of you will guess without your options being limited to book or bank. Imagine you have a super smart robot friend who has read every dash. And folks, I want you to pay attention to the chat because this really explains how we are similar to the kind of AI models we are building. What all words are you seeing? There's mind, there's newspaper, there's sentence, there's story, there's patterns, there's information, there's news, there's words, there's brains, there's databases. The words keep coming. It's as diverse as the 13,000 people that are there on this call. And the reason for that is all of these feel like the right answer. So, what is AI doing? If it's just predicting the next word, looks like there are thousands of words that could have fit this blank and we would have still been happy. What AI is doing is trying to pick the most probable word in that particular blank so that we are satisfied as users. You all remember the thumbs up and the thumbs down that you see at ChatGPT, right? Where you say if you like the response, you can give a thumbs up. It's actually optimizing the responses to ensure that the user's getting what they want. And they know that when they want, they will give it a thumbs up. Or when they don't like it, they'll give it a thumbs down. Or maybe you'll chat further saying, no, that's not what I meant. I want you to explain it like a 8-year-old, right? So it understands that, okay, they didn't like it. So let me go ahead and refine this update. Now, this is the last step where it chooses a particular set of words and it comes out something like this, right? Imagine you have a super smart robot friend who has read every book, every story, every conversation. And when you ask it a question, it looks through all those words it has learned and finds the best answer just like magic. Kind of like what we just did, right? So we are not very different in that sense. Now, a quick recap of what just happened. You put in a query, it got tokenized into small little chunks. Those chunks were embedded and converted into numbers. And those numbers then go through a very complex mechanism called as the transformer. And in the transformer, it understands what to pay attention to. Then it goes into prediction of what words should come after one another. And lastly, it decides saying, okay, I think this is the best sequence of words that the user will like. So let me go ahead and put it in front of the user. Fairly simple. I know it got a little technical in there, but this is something that will help you understand each time you're chatting with AI. And I'm sure a lot of you are doing that. You now have a wee bit better understanding of what's happening behind the scenes, right? Awesome. Now, I'm guessing a lot of you understand how Gen AI works. Yes? And I'm happy because once you understand what's happening in the background, you will then move on to the next part of this session, which is okay, I know a little bit about what's happening behind the scenes, but how do I get the outputs that I want? How do I ensure AI is listening to me? Right? This happens when you learn how to instruct or talk to models. In other words, it's called as prompting, prompting techniques, prompt engineering. There's multiple names for this. And there's multiple techniques that are becoming very, very popular. This used to be a field that people were crazy about 3 years ago. Today, it is expected from everyone that you know prompting, like you know English almost in the global working world. I want to share with you one prompt structure instead of sharing 60 odd methods that I've learned. I want to share one that will get started in terms of getting outputs that you really enjoy, right? And at Outskill, we call it the magic prompt formula. Now we'll do it again with something super meta, right? The use case that I want to cover is a workshop like this. Today we have more than 10,000 people here. But what if I want to go ahead and write an email to get 10,000 more people for the upcoming week and get more people into that workshop? I can write straight into ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or any of these AI LLMs, go there and say, hey, Write an email to 10,000 subscribers inviting them for this generative AI workshop. Now, it won't understand what this is. It won't understand who your audience is. It won't understand a lot of things, but it'll still respond because it's compelled to respond the moment you prompt it. But if you were to structure your prompt into something like this, right? It looks like an email itself, it's long, but once you get familiar with it, this is the way you start thinking. Every good prompt is broken into three parts. One is the content, one is the context, and the third is the context. Is in fact gone ahead and given me two different angles. Do you want to write as an operator or do you want to write as an investor, right? And it then picked up you scaled Uber's chaos. This is the same problem, different country. And there you go. It gives me wow. It's now asking me directly, do I want to send this via email by just giving, an input, right? So of course, these different tools have different benefits, but the goal for us is to not just marry to one tool but understand at large how can I use AI to get my stuff done, right? So that was us writing a super personalized cold email by literally just grabbing a screenshot from this particular prompt that Vaibhav has written, and we suddenly have his way of structuring the prompts available for us. So whenever you see a good prompt out there, remember this, you can just screenshot it and you can say, hey, convert my prompt into that, and then just store it, and you can keep using it again and again and again. Super cool, right? Now that you know at a very high level how a model works and how it responds to your instructions, you want to move on to the next step in your AI journey. You began with understanding a little bit of how AI works. You now know, oh, if I structure my prompts well, I will get very good quality outputs. But there's one other very important question before you get started on going crazy with AI. And that is the
Which
aspect of
model to
model to
progress.
use, model to use where. Now, whenever you're chatting with Chat GPT, right, you're not actually chatting with Chat GPT, right? You're chatting with the model that Chat GPT has built. Depending on if you're a free user, if you're a Go user, if you're a pro user, you chat with different models. Same with Claude, same with Gemini, same with Meta, same with Copilot, same with Grok. All these were built by some very large companies. China and US are leading this race, but we have interesting competitors coming from France, coming from India. But at large, all of these models are their bets to making sure we are getting what we want. So, for example, ChatGPT focuses a lot on generic audiences. Claude focuses a lot on working audiences, especially developers. Gemini focuses a lot on creative audiences. Their video and image generation capabilities are incredible, right? So every major model out there is trying to appeal to a certain audience and trying to make their work easier. So, depending on what genre of work you do, you want to be aware of, hey, which model is the best for my kind of work? It's exactly like thinking about people. Which person will fit into that role that I'm hiring for? Right? That's the mindset that, I tend to use. And it's going to blow your mind to understand that each of these players, we think we're just using ChatGPT, but we're using all of these. We're using Claude, but we're using all of this, right? So each of these players has multiple models available for you. And if I had to ask you to take a guess on how many AI models are out there, what would be your answer? Because you've just seen about 15 odd models in the previous screen. How many models do you think are there? Hmm. Thousands, infinity. I like the enthusiasm, but some of them look like they've been attending this mastermind from before because they're very precise numbers. Now, the commercially available models that you see are right here on the screen. So this is one of those slides that we keep updating every once in a while because every week there are new models that are releasing. As of today, there are 617 models or more. We'll go to the tool live and check. But this is indicating to you that all of these models are available for you to use. You might be like, oh, I thought only ChatGPT exists or ChatGPT and Claude exist. But the truth is, you have a lot more freedom once you get a little bit more deeper into the space of AI. Now, you might naturally have the question saying, hey, how do I know which model to use where? Right? So I'm going to show you two tools to actually understand that. The first one is the ranking list that you just saw, and we'll go live into that. This is a tool called as Open Router, and Open Router is a place where all these models are unified and provided to you. You can, pay a few credits like your, Venmo or Paytm balance, depending on where you come from. And once you add that, you can start using AI. You can start with, $1 if that matters, right? You don't need to take $20, $30 subscriptions. You can start with $1 and then you can start using some of the top models out there. Now, in Open Router, in this rankings page, there's something interesting that happens. Yes, there's a general leaderboard. Yes, there's a market share. But what I want you to focus on is the aspect of categories. Now, categories is where you can go by what department or vertical you work in. right? And you can decide, okay, what do I do now? Uh, I'm someone that is interested in how is AI, which AI models are doing well in finance. So I just go ahead and click on finance, and you'll see some models that you probably didn't expect to, right? So even though Gemini 3 is out there, Gemini 2.5 Flash is the most used finance model. Then there is Claude Sonnet 4. Then there is, even older models out there. If I move to health, you'll see that Claude has come up to the top. Oh no, it's refreshed. Gemini 3 Flash is come up to the top. Quen, which is a Chinese model, makes it at rank 2. And some of these models might be like, oh, hey, what are these names? I've never even seen them. That's okay, right? Because there's so many models out there that are incredibly good, and you just have to figure out what is the right model for myself. Now I can choose marketing for all those people coming from marketing, and you'll see that this ranking is again changing. And there's a Hunter Alpha that has come up this week. We've not even heard of this. But if 17.7 billion tokens or 10% of the world's usage is happening on this particular model, you might be curious as a marketer, saying, hey, how do I get to know whether this model works really well for me? Right? So it's very important for you to have a bet saying, okay, I'm going to try these top three models. I'm going to try and see if they give me better outputs. And if they do, I'm going to finalize on one of them. This is exactly like your hiring process, right? Now, you might have seen a bunch of models there, but how do you actually get to use these models? Because, hey, Arvi, you showed me, there's 600 odd models, but what do I do? Where do I go, right? So there's two ways in which you can do that. One is obviously OpenRouter has its own chat, and for free you can test some of these models. So you can do flagship models, reasoning models, coding models, or role play models. You can just go ahead and choose a bunch of models, right? For example, I can say 3, Gemini 3, and I'll see the entire Gemini 3 family, and I can add this and start chatting with it. But I'd like to show you another very, very interesting tool, because once you've decided what are the top models in your space, you want to know what you like. And this is very, very important because this comes down to an individual. I and you might use different models, but our outputs might be, drastically different as well. And why is that? It's because we have a sense of judgment about whether something that is coming out of AI is good or not, right? So, for example, if I ask a bunch of models in this lovely tool called as Multi, let me just open that. So, this is Multi. It's called Multi because it allows you to compare multiple models for free, right? So you have a GPT 4.1 mini. Let's remember some of the names that we saw there. So let's see what's in the Gemini family. Okay, we have Gemini 2.5 Flash that was doing fantastically on marketing. So let me choose that. Let me also maybe pick a Chinese model. So I'm going to see what DeepSeek is coming up with. We have the V3 and the V3.1. These are good models again. Now I'm doing this naturally because I've spent a lot of time with these models, and I want all of you to also do the same so that you know what is it that you want. Now I can just come here and give all of them the same prompt. Hey, can you write a poem about how um, everyone is interested in learning AI, but at the same time, AI is changing every day, so it's becoming impossible to actually learn. I'm sure a lot of you will relate to that thought, right? So I'm gonna just send, and you can see that all three models have been hit at the same time, right? And all three of them have given you an output. And this is super fascinating, right? Because you are now not married to just ChatGPT. You're chatting with ChatGPT, with Google, and with DeepSeek in just one interface. And then the way Multi's model works is they expect you to give it feedback. So it can go back and tell these companies that, we've seen someone who's written a poetry prompt, and they say that they prefer GPT-4 mini. Say if you want to, if you like this, we go ahead and click on this thumbs up or this thumbs up, and we are giving it feedback. Now, this is where I said you have to figure out what you like. So you go through these and you say, oh, this is a 4 line, poem. This is a 2 line poem. This is a 4 line poem. Say you were looking for a 2 line poem, right? You would prefer this response. I'll go and say, I prefer this response. It's accurate, it's stylish, it's insightful, it's well written. I needed a 2 line poem and it figured that out, right? You say that and you send feedback, and the feedback's gone through. That ways, with the help of multi, you're basically getting to a point where you can chat with your favorite models until you figure out which is your top model. And that is going to keep changing depending on which department or which vertical that you work in. For marketing, there's one. For finance, there's one. For health, there's one. You name it, they have a model for that particular vertical. Now, moving on, there's one model that everyone needs to know because it's the most powerful. And it's just been over a year since this has come into the world. And this type of model is called as the reasoning model. Now, reasoning models have the ability to imitate or mimic chains of thought that humans have, right? Say, for example, I want to plan a party. Immediately, in my mind, there's a bunch of new thoughts that come up, right? Let's do this exercise. All of you try and think, okay, today's a nice Saturday. Let me plan a party tonight at my home. Or should it be outside? Right? You can see how there's a new thought that came right there, right? Oh, I don't know if I want to do it at home. I don't know if I want to do it outside. If I want to spend money, I want to go outside and listen to some good music. If I want to just stay at home and make it a chill party, maybe I'll just invite some of my friends over and we'll watch movies and stuff like that. Now, our human brain just keeps on making these connections, right? You'll be like, oh, who do I invite? What for food? How do we do the cleaning? How do I order stuff? All of this is what we call as chains of thoughts because they just form naturally, right? They just form like one after the other. You have the output of the first thought and the input that becomes the input for the second thought, and that is an example of a chain. And reasoning models have this ability to operate in a chain. Every major company that we just saw in that previous slide has their own version of thinking or reasoning models. You can see that OpenAI has